Chapter 11 Pride and Prejudice, Part 2. After Gordon and Batman left the chapel's underground, both remained somewhat silent. After all, the place they had just been in had claimed dozens of lives in just 1 month. Gotham is a dark city, but when this darkness is laid bare before people, only those with strong willpower can digest the impact of this profound darkness. Both Batman and Gordon are experiencing a surge of emotions. Batman, newly arrived and handling his first case, is faced with seemingly boundless evil and utter darkness. He suddenly realizes, as Schiller said, that he may indeed not be fully prepared. Powerful force is merely a means of survival here, but to save this city, force alone is far from sufficient. Just then, Batman turned a corner and saw Schiller standing on the second floor again, holding an umbrella. Below the balcony was the place where the beggar used to stay. Batman felt a sense of absurdity. How could this damned criminal, who had killed dozens of innocent lives, still dare to stand here? Why are there people in this world who can be so indifferent to living beings? They can even be so cruel as to kill them without hesitation. Batman's inner depression turned into anger, and under Gordon's gaze, he leaped up along the street and landed on a balcony more than 2 meters high. "Your trial is about to begin, you damned murderer," Batman said. "Have you found the evidence you're looking for?" Schiller asked. "Of course. And this evidence is sufficient to put you in trial." Schiller suddenly laughed and said in an extremely light-hearted tone, "How ridiculous. You're still thinking about putting me on trial. The Gotham City Police Department should really award you a Good Citizen Medal. You're a great cop. If only there were such great police officers when your parents died, who found the evidence left by the murderers and brought them to trial. Wouldn't that be wonderful? That's what you think, right? You don't trust the police or the court, yet you still try to find evidence and attempt to use the correctness of the law to judge me. Don't you think you're contradicting yourself? You're trying to prove I broke the law, Batman, and your actions broke the law too. If I'm on trial, so are you. You're using criminal acts to prove a criminal is a criminal, aren't you?" Schiller raised his voice, emphasizing, "You think you have the ability to take revenge on criminals by your own means, but in the end, you are still just an ordinary person tamed by this orderly society, and you are still talking about evidence and demanding trial. If you cannot let go of these things, cannot let go of the shackles that the orderly society has imposed on you, and cannot erase the concepts of law and judicial procedures from your mind, you will never be able to achieve the justice you desire." "Bruce," Schiller said, looking into his eyes, "the law is not justice. You are. Gotham's laws didn't save your parents, just as they didn't save these dozens of missing people. If you continue to have any futile illusions about them, you'll never become a real Batman." Schiller could clearly see Batman's arm trembling. The veins on his hand gripping the batarang were bulging, and even his entire body was shaking. Clearly, he had become extremely angry. Schiller's words were truly scathing. He exposed one of the biggest contradictions in the young Batman. Gotham's laws couldn't save his parents, but Batman, who kept talking about revenge, was still bound by the rules of order, and in the end, he still followed the law. "You want me to uphold my own justice?" Batman asked. Then he raised a gun and pointed it at Schiller's forehead. "Batman certainly has a gun. In Gotham City, without such firearms, you could barely survive, let alone uphold justice." Schiller remained calm. He said, "You haven't answered my previous question. Have you found the evidence you wanted? What is it?" "There are stains you left on the crates under the chapel, filled with dirt and leaves. Leaves of North American red pine that can only be found at Gotham University." Schiller said, "What does that represent?" "That means you are the murderer," Batman said. "Really? I appeared alone on the streets of Morrison out of nowhere. My clothes and actions were very suspicious. And you found leaves belonging to Gotham University at the crime scene, which means the killer might be someone from Gotham University, so I am the killer." "What a rigorous deduction," Schiller said. Batman looked at his expression, devoid of any remorse, and at his nonchalant tone. His anger had truly reached its peak. Just as he was about to pull the trigger, Gordon, who had run over, shouted, "Stop! Put the gun down!" Batman was interrupted for a split second, and Schiller threw a memory card onto the ground between them, saying, "Conclusive evidence? The killer went to Gotham University, and I'm a university professor. That's absolutely conclusive. Yes, how much you wish that when your parents died, someone could be like you now, decisively shooting the murderer because the evidence is conclusive." "Don't mention my parents," Batman said, his voice trembling slightly. "You criminal! You've thought of many similarities, Schiller said, but your anger has made you overlook many more differences. For example, I have never had any educational background in chemistry or biology. I have participated in the investigation of countless serial murder cases, so my counter-surveillance awareness wouldn't be so bad that I wouldn't even know how to clean up my footprints. More importantly, Schiller looked at the memory card and said, "My evidence is much more conclusive than yours." Batman's anger subsided slightly after Gordon interrupted him, and once his senses returned, he felt that even in this damp and cold weather, his shirt was soaked with sweat. Batman cautiously picked up the USB drive and plugged it into the microcomputer on his arm. A projection popped up. At this moment, Gordon also went around to the balcony. He saw in the video that a person wearing a plaid shirt was standing suspiciously on the outdoor unit of an air conditioner in a house, sticking a hose into the window. The figures that were standing and sitting in the house fell down one after another. After the person jumped off the outdoor unit, he walked into the hallway. After a while, he dragged 2 large boxes, put them on a trailer, and pushed it away. The figures in the house had all disappeared. This was the inspiration Batman gave Schiller. Jonathan really lacked counter-surveillance awareness. Schiller was standing in the stairwell of the building opposite him, taking pictures with a camera, and he didn't even notice. That makes sense, though. Nobody in Gotham City would wander around late at night. Especially in a slum like this, you could easily lose your life. Gordon suddenly shouted, "No wonder. I remember that when registering the addresses of missing persons, it was true that residents on lower floors were more likely to be victimized, and almost all the victims' apartments had balconies," Gordon said. Then he looked at Batman and Schiller and said angrily to Batman, "I really misjudged you. Were you just about to shoot? Do you know you almost killed someone?" Batman stared silently at the projection on his arm. Anyone with eyes could see that the killer's size was vastly different from Schiller's. Although Schiller doesn't fight or work out, he's still quite tall, only a little shorter and thinner than Batman, but still close to 1.9 meters. The person in the video is at most 1.7 meters tall and weighs no more than 60 kilograms. Professor Jonathan is a nice guy, you think so, right? Because he doesn't check homework, he's very nice to you, and he'll never fail you. But I'm different. I'm a very troublesome professor. I'm always finding fault with homework, giving exams for no reason, and threatening all students that they might fail. So of course I'm the murderer and he isn't. After all, how could such a cowardly, taciturn, thin, and small person be a serial killer? "Stop talking," Batman said, his voice trembling. He recalled the scene when he faced the beggar that day. Out of the corner of his eye, he could still see the stain left by the beggar leaning against the wall. That intense sense of guilt and shame enveloped him again. Gordon's words only added fuel to the fire. "I don't care where you're from, you weirdo in a tight suit causing trouble in the city, but you almost killed an innocent man. What grudge do you two have? If you have a personal feud, then settle it yourselves and don't interfere with the police investigation. Aren't the Gotham City police busy enough? You want to kill someone in front of me? Do you want me to send you to jail right now?" Gordon said. Several days of overtime had left him irritable. He said impatiently, "You weirdo in the tight suit. Give me that USB drive right now. I need to take it back for filing. Sir, please come back with me. You seem to know who the murderer is. We need clues." After a moment of silence, Batman silently reached out and handed the USB drive to Gordon. He discovered that his ambitious debut was actually a disaster. The criminal Schiller, whom he thought was guilty, had been the one who helped him the most by providing the crucial evidence. Schiller remained silent, Batman stood still, and outside, the relentless rain began to fall again. Just as he was about to leave with Gordon, he heard Batman behind him say, "I'm sorry, Professor." Schiller paused, somewhat incredulous. What had Batman just said? He just apologized? Schiller turned around in disbelief. Batman stood in the shadow cast by the building, the only light shining on his mask. He was pressing his lips tightly together. Schiller found it all utterly absurd. He's Batman after all, because he is Batman. But Batman is always right. Batman will not apologize to anyone. Faced with everyone's doubts, he would only say one thing, "Because I am Batman." Schiller saw too much of Batman's dark side in the Batman comics, such as preparing kryptonite to guard against Superman, and having a plan to deal with each member of the Justice League. He seemed to distrust everyone, not even himself. It must be said that the comics editors made this character even more captivating by highlighting his darker side, thus leaving a deeper impression on readers. But this also created a prejudice against Batman in Schiller's mind. He believed that Batman should be exactly like that, just like in the comics. Batman never apologizes because he doesn't think he's wrong. He believes those measures to protect his companions are necessary. This created a prejudice in Schiller that Batman wasn't incapable of apologizing. When he truly realized he was wrong, he would still feel regret and guilt. Schiller did indeed want to teach the young Batman some lessons, such as not being prejudiced, not judging by appearances, not letting anger cloud your judgment, and maintaining independent thinking. But Schiller suddenly realized that he wasn't really qualified to teach Batman not to be prejudiced, because he himself had an indelible stereotype of the character. He wanted Bruce to become the Batman in his mind from the comics, and the sooner the better. But now it seems that this story is not about a wise and learned professor and his young and impetuous student, but rather a very classic book, Pride and Prejudice. Batman, with absolute arrogance in his reasoning, believed that Schiller must be the murderer. When he was prejudiced and had some evidence that just matched his prejudice, he almost shot Schiller. Schiller also harbored a prejudice against Batman, believing that he should be the mature, cautious, and suspicious dark hero depicted in the comics. The two are not exactly evenly matched, though one could say they are equally bad. Now Batman seems to have learned this lesson. He clearly realizes that he is not omniscient or omnipotent. His reasoning can also be constrained by prejudice, leading to huge errors, and his impulses, under this arrogance, become even more fatal. He saw the scar on Schiller's neck, the one he'd left with a batarang before, when he'd assumed Schiller was a criminal and threatened him like one. Although he hadn't fired today, as Gordon had said, the wound was deep and would probably leave a scar. Batman felt guilty and terrified. He thought that the fact that the law cannot properly judge every criminal was not a reason for him to arbitrarily judge others based on his own arrogance. When he cannot guarantee that he is 100% right, any impulsive act of violence could leave an indelible scar on an innocent person, or even a good person. He was just relieved that the price paid by the innocent was not their lives. Batman stood in the shadows, thinking that he would prevent this possibility from ever happening again. So he decided that no matter how vicious the criminal was, he would never kill him. If any innocent person were to die unjustly at his hands, he would become a more heinous criminal than the one who killed his parents. Because the criminals who killed his parents may have been motivated by greed or revenge, and the damage they caused resulted in 2 lives being lost. If Batman indiscriminately kills innocent people, then this city will have no hope left. The idea that Batman doesn't kill seems to have existed from the beginning of the comics. Schiller didn't bother to investigate why. He found the premise infuriating. For example, why couldn't Batman just kill those pesky criminals, those crazy lunatics who repeatedly escaped from prison and caused trouble? He had thought about this countless times while reading the comics. But what he didn't expect was that, in this world, the young Batman was determined not to kill criminals because of him and because of Schiller. Because he is Batman, he is the city's only hope. If he is overwhelmed by guilt for killing innocent people, then the city is doomed. By a twist of fate, Schiller, though still unable to help the young Batman establish his own mental support, successfully completed one of Batman's defining characteristics: that he does not kill. Schiller could never have imagined that he would regret his meddling countless times in the years to come. After Batman fully matured, Schiller repeatedly roared in his heart, "Why can't Batman just lift a finger and strangle those damned criminals, so they won't keep appearing in front of him and disrupting his peaceful life?" All of this stems from what happened today. It's all his own fault. Chapter 12: The Genius of Stacking Buffs. In Hell's Kitchen, a window suddenly opened. A gust of cold wind rushed in, and a silver-white mech sped in, circling the room quickly before landing with a jet of steam. With a whoosh, Mark II's mask fell off. Stark stood in front of the table, looked around the room, and said with a hint of disdain, "This place of yours is really shabby." Schiller rolled his eyes as he looked at his hot coffee, which had instantly cooled down in the cold wind. In terms of character design, Stark reformed himself after being kidnapped, transforming from an annoying playboy into a superhero. But now, in Schiller's opinion, he has clearly gone from being a very annoying playboy to an ordinary annoying playboy. Unlike Bruce, who also disguises himself as a playboy, but while Bruce might be made of synthetic leather, Stark is definitely made of genuine leather. But through his interactions with Stark, Schiller has figured out 3 topics that could make him explode: money, male virility, and that he is not as good as his father. Schiller took a sip of coffee and said slowly, "I know my consultation fee is expensive, but that's okay. You can complain for a while longer. As long as I don't get to the point, I won't charge you. Besides, you know what? The disgusted look on your face when you wiped the dust off my desk was more girly than the cherries on a cream cake. I admit the environment here is indeed not good. After all, I'm not a billionaire like you. But then again, Mr. Howard must have started from scratch in a dilapidated house like this back then. This is probably a hardship you can't understand. Which is why Miss Pepper was worried for so long after you were kidnapped. After Schiller stacked all 3 buffs, Stark indeed exploded on the spot. The Silver Mark II exploded with a bang, clearly indicating that Stark had just hammered something inside. Oh, Schiller remembers there are 2 other things that would make Stark explode. Questioning Stark's intelligence and saying that Stark Industries products are garbage. Poor Mark II, and poor Jarvis. Forgive my bluntness, but the quality of Stark Industries products is just so. Of course, there is one last point, to express sympathy for him. But it's okay. It's much better than those robot rice cookers on the market. It's a qualitative leap. Stark rushed back out through the same window he had come in through. Clearly, if he stayed any longer, the Mark II would probably blow up in Hell's Kitchen. Schiller sighed with relief, the depression brought on by Gotham and Batman completely gone. However, Stark soon flew back, saying irritably, "I called you but you didn't answer, so I had to fly to this pile of junk. You broke my Jarvis last time, and when I tried to upgrade it today, I found it was completely broken and crashed. You have to fix it." Before Schiller could say anything, Stark interrupted him, saying, "Don't expect me to pay you a single penny for your medical services. You're the one who broke him, and it's delayed the development of my new Jaeger. You have to fix him, or I'll have Pepper fire you." Schiller thought about it and realized that the Mark V was still not out, so Jarvis might really be unable to work. Although Stark didn't rely on Jarvis for research and development, he did rely on Jarvis to take care of him, as Jarvis was unable to take care of himself, especially in the laboratory. Schiller knew Stark was still angry, but since he was in a better mood now, he might as well offer a free consultation. So Schiller put his hands on his hips and said, "Okay, it's free this time, let's go." Stark snapped his fingers, and another mech flew in. Schiller stared at him, pointing at the mech and saying, "You don't mean to make me ride in this one, do you? Otherwise what? How do you plan to get there?" A few minutes later, Stark and Schiller appeared at a dilapidated bus stop in Hell's Kitchen. Stark said, "I can't believe my groundbreaking suit is making its debut on a smoky, beat-up old bus." Just then, the dilapidated bus belching black smoke arrived. Schiller greeted the driver, and Stark struggled to get Mark II to climb on. Schiller said, "Actually, you could lift the whole bus up and fly over. Then why can't you just fly over there in your suit? What the hell difference is there?" Stark asked. Schiller shrugged and said, "Because the image of Iron Man flying with the Hellbus on his back would be beautiful." Upon arriving at Stark's lab, Stark stood in front of a pile of panels and said, "I don't know what you've done. Jarvis is crashed, or maybe not. His hardware is perfectly fine, but he just won't work. I'm planning to give him a major upgrade, but I don't want this situation to happen again. After all, if he crashes when someone asks him a few questions, he won't be able to participate in combat missions at all, and that's not what I want." When it comes to his profession, Stark is quite straightforward. He said, "I want Jarvis to be a true electronic life form. He can be an all-around butler, or even the best butler in the world. But he seems to be stuck on your emotional logic, even though I've already set a way for him to think about emotions." Schiller said, "This is actually a paradox, just like the questions I asked him. When a machine makes a choice, it always follows the logic of self-interest. But when the logic of self-interest conflicts with the master's command, you set it to follow the master's command, but you also give it emotion. After the conflict between emotion and reason, the machine cannot deceive itself like a human. He can't find reasons to convince himself like a human being. He can't admit that this is the best outcome. He can't escape or forget, so of course he'll get stuck." Stark waved his hand and said, "Could I hide such contradictory logic? For example, by listing certain words as prohibited words, or by blocking certain emotional issues. You want him to become a real electronic life form? Of course, those with souls just like us. Okay, to put it simply, if you want Jarvis to have real feelings, then he can't get around these issues, but if he can't figure them out, then he's not really alive. The problem is that he is troubled by these issues, so he can't work, but I need him very much. Am I supposed to wait for him to process his emotions on his own, like waiting for a woman to have an emotional breakdown? So you just let Miss Pepper deal with her emotional breakdowns on her own?" Seeing the look Schiller gave him like it was dog shit, Stark said, "Damn it, I didn't. Of course I'd comfort her. What are you thinking? Schiller said, "The decision is actually yours. Haven't you realized? Tony, may I call you that? All the contradictions in his thinking stem from you, because you created him, set the rules that require him to serve you, and his underlying protocol demands that he obey your commands. This is not a way of thinking that humans should have. If I asked you the same question, how would you answer? If your father is about to die, and one of your decisions could save him, but he strongly opposes it, what would you do? If you obeyed his wishes and failed to save him, and he died, would you regret it? If he dies, do you think he'll regret having you before he dies? If he dies, do you think he will resent you? If he resents you, will you feel guilty? If you were given another chance, would you make a different choice? If you went against his wishes and chose to save him, and he blamed you afterwards, would you feel resentful? If you defied his wishes and saved him, and he regretted giving birth to you because he felt you had disobeyed him, would you resent him? Stark remained silent. For the first time, he didn't mention his father to anyone and instead feigned a strong reaction. He won't do that, Stark said. His voice was low but firm. He said, he won't stop me from saving him. If I make a big mistake because of saving him, he will choose to make amends as much as possible after he comes back to life, even if it costs him his life again. Does Jarvis understand you like this? Schiller stood up, patted Stark on the shoulder and said, does he know that you actually look a lot like your father? Does his knowledge of you answer all these questions? You can't expect an electronic life form that uses algorithms and logic to actively understand your past and your personality. What you don't instill in him is a blank slate for him. If you want him to have a real life, the first thing you have to do is to do what your father gave you. You have to give him a part of your life first, including your past, your personality, and your way of thinking, like the birth of a child. Stark remained silent for a long time, then frowned unusually, revealing a somewhat troubled expression. He said, I firmly believe that there is no such thing as mind reading in this world, and Jarvis couldn't either. So how could he understand me? It's an almost impossible technology. You don't understand artificial intelligence. I don't understand artificial intelligence, but you don't understand humans. Stark was speechless again, but Schiller quickly followed up. Human beings exist because of intelligence and are great because of emotions. Of all the creatures God created, we are the only ones who have maintained prosperity over the years. You are challenging God. He did not create any creature comparable to humans, but perhaps you can, can't you? This is a completely new field, Tony. Even your father never came here. What you are conquering is a field that has never made any significant progress in human history, creating non-human beings. The imposing manner with which Stark left made Schiller think that he might actually be capable of doing it. However, he still remembered to call Miss Pepper and say, Good afternoon, Miss Pepper. It's like this, I gave Mr. Stark some kind of stimulant therapy. Yes, it's my own invention, but it's very effective, though it has some side effects. Yes, he's already at the lab? What? He didn't even remember your date this afternoon? That's incredibly rude of him. That's right, it'll be like this for the next few days. This is a necessary process for adjusting dopamine and adrenaline levels. Then his hormone levels will drop and return to normal. Yes, it will get better soon. Schiller is talking nonsense. His move is what's commonly known as getting a shot of adrenaline. And it's a full-blown boost of adrenaline. Stark will definitely be filled with a sense of mission buff and plunge headfirst into the lab, not leaving for at least half a month. He suddenly discovered that he had a unique talent for stacking buffs. Schiller stroked his chin, wishing he could stack them himself. However, his basic panel is too weak, and no matter how much data he adds, he still can't improve. He might as well think about how to improve his basics. Chapter 13, The Ancient One's Voice Call Invitation. After driving Batman to depression that night, Schiller returned to the Marvel Universe. After giving Stark a pep talk, Daredevil in Hell's Kitchen went to escape a vendetta. Spider-Man had just gained his powers and hadn't even officially debuted yet, so Schiller had nothing to do. After that night, Schiller found that he had another chance to chat randomly. He had figured it out. As long as he had a significant impact on a character in a certain world, he would get a chance to chat randomly. Clearly, his conversation with Batman that night had a profound impact on him. Schiller decided to take advantage of this free time to chat. Professor Charles seemed to be busy with student recruitment lately, and Spider-Man was too excited about his new abilities to reply to messages. For a while, there was no one to chat with, and Schiller felt quite lonely. So he took advantage of the random chat opportunity And suddenly a voice call interface appeared in his mind, something that had never happened when he chatted with Charles or Spider-Man. They were both replying by typing, and Schiller was seeing chat boxes in his mind, but this time it turned into voice messages. Schiller glanced at the portrait. It was the Ancient One, the Sorcerer Supreme. The Ancient One, the Sage Supreme, has sent you a voice call invitation. Should you answer or not? If you answer, what should you say? Schiller scratched his head, but ultimately accepted. Mysterious cosmic voice. Where do you come from? Schiller sensed a series of sounds, or rather, thoughts and brainwaves, but he didn't hear any sounds. Yet he understood what the other person meant. Schiller replied telepathically, "Who are you?" On the Himalayas, the Ancient One sat cross-legged on a futon, deep in meditation. Suddenly, she frowned, and a voice answered her. The Ancient One often seeks answers through meditation to the noisy sounds of the universe. The various echoes in the universe represent different mysterious omens in her mind. She can use these cosmic sounds to divine, cleanse her mind, and gain peace. But these cosmic sounds are always disordered noises, never any logical notes. The Ancient One firmly believes that any conscious spirit wandering in the universe is a future cosmic demon. She immediately became vigilant and focused all her energy. Her willpower was so strong that it could scan the entire universe in the vicinity in an instant, but she found nothing unusual after scanning around. The voice that answered her seemed to appear out of nowhere, without any source or unusual energy. Schiller knew that the Ancient One was very strong, and if she were to incorporate the comic book setting, she would be several times stronger than in the movies. Moreover, the Sorcerer Supreme of today was not the young Batman. She was already at her peak. But Schiller still intended to take the risk for his fortune. He said, "Answer me. Answer me. No matter where you come from, no matter who you are, stay away from Earth." The Ancient One's reply was very firm. "Guardians of the Earth? Answer me. I am the Sorcerer Supreme of Earth. Who are you? Why are you sending out cosmic signals? I come from Calcosa, Lake Halley in the Aldebaran system. The dark sun is already high in the sky." The Ancient One sensed a series of incomprehensible messages coming from the other side. She knew that communicating with an unknown being in the universe was extremely dangerous, but she had to find out if the other party would harm Earth. The other party's information was very obscure and difficult to understand, but Gui heard several recurring terms. Calcosa, Hastur, Lake Halley. After a series of nonsensical exchanges, Gui roughly understood that the other person seemed to be warning her. She heard them repeatedly say, "The day the stars return to their places, the day the old days return." The Ancient One believed that the person opposite might be called Hastur, living in a place called Calcosa, where there is a Halley lake shrouded in thick fog, and that his enemies, the Great Old Ones, would return to Earth when the stars were aligned. Under the Ancient One's persistent questioning, she learned that the being on the other side seemed to be imprisoned, thus unable to personally confront his enemies. He was spreading signals near Earth to warn humanity. But the Ancient One knew that Earthlings and these cosmic demons were of different life forms and could not hear those cosmic signals at all. If he hadn't been meditating every day, no one would have been able to understand what the beings on the other side were saying. Even the Ancient One couldn't fully understand the brainwave signals transmitted by the other party. There seemed to be too much information mixed in, such as the Great Old Ones, the leader of the demons, and Azathoth. The other party seemed eager to give her all the information, but unfortunately, the Ancient One could not fully understand him. She didn't actually trust these unknown extraterrestrial beings, but she couldn't sense their presence or feel that Earth was being watched. However, their warning attitude made her feel pressured. Where did this group of demons come from? Moreover, they seemed to be able to come near Earth silently and spread signals. Who can guarantee that they won't affect the human spirit? It must be said that the Ancient One's status as the Sorcerer Supreme for so many years was well-deserved. Her concerns were very reasonable. If this story wasn't fabricated by Schiller, then anyone associated with the Cthulhu mythos would truly go mad. Fortunately, this was just something Schiller made up to fool the Ancient One. Just as Gui was about to continue probing, the communication was cut off, and it seemed that the other side had encountered some trouble. He made no demands, offered no way to lend his power to anyone, and didn't spout any nonsense about ruling the universe. This actually made the Ancient One believe in him a little more. Demons rarely know how to hide. They can't help their madness and chaos. If the other side is a dangerous guy, the experienced Ancient One would definitely go through the network cable and kill him immediately. But now it seems that the demon on the other side is very gentle and rational, but the Ancient One has not let her guard down at all, which may just be a facade. Schiller had mastered the art of always leaving things unsaid. Before the Ancient One could ask for more details, he hung up the phone, then rubbed his hands together, intending to replicate the Ancient One's ability. He tapped, and a system notification sounded. Magic ability, low level, has been loaded. Schiller knew that the Ancient One's abilities must be mystical and related to magic. After being equipped with magical abilities, Schiller began testing them, and he discovered that the abilities were a mixed bag. The advantage is that he doesn't have to follow the magical conventions of the Marvel Universe. Schiller can cast spells without paying any price or experiencing any side effects. However, the bad news is that it is indeed only a low-level magical ability. Schiller can only do things like telekinesis, fire magic, and a short-range teleportation. The range of telekinesis is about 10 meters, which is somewhat similar to the levitation charm. Schiller can move objects within 10 meters at will, but this only includes objects that do not exceed Schiller's weight. Objects like houses or cars cannot be moved. The flame charm is almost entirely non-aggressive. Schiller can ignite a flame in his palm, but the power of that flame is probably enough to burn a little smoke, a piece of paper, or a book. Expecting to use it to hit someone is wishful thinking. The most useful ability is blink. Schiller can appear or disappear at any location within a range of about 20 meters, which is enough for him to avoid many dangers. However, while casting spells didn't come at a price, it still consumed physical and mental energy. After about 5 or 6 consecutive flashes, Schiller was so tired he could barely stand. More importantly, his mind began to fill with noise, making it difficult to concentrate, a consequence of overusing magic. However, compared to the high costs that other Marvel sorcerers have to pay to cast spells, Schiller is already very lucky. The abilities he possesses are often marked as low level, indicating that they can be upgraded, but Schiller hasn't yet found a way to do so. He suspects that perhaps he needs to increase his intimacy with the characters he chats with, help them, or save them to gain higher-level abilities. In extreme situations, continuous flashes allow Schiller to move more than 100 meters away from his original position in a very short time, and this ability ignores obstacles along the way, including walls. He could sit in his own psychiatric clinic and then instantly appear in a house 2 blocks away. The biggest advantage this gave Schiller was that S.H.I.E.L.D. agents could no longer catch him. S.H.I.E.L.D. agents had, of course, tracked them down to Hell's Kitchen long ago. But just as Schiller had predicted, the place was crowded and noisy, and the gangsters were very wary of outsiders. S.H.I.E.L.D. also frequently encountered various obstacles in their operations. For example, when they rented the house opposite Schiller's clinic, they were extorted for a large sum of money. Ever since Schiller started using teleportation to leave the house, the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents have been completely baffled. They clearly haven't seen Schiller leave, but a while later, he'll walk back from the street. Or they've seen Schiller leave, but haven't seen him return, only to see him reappear in the clinic a while later. This completely shattered the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent's speculation about Schiller's work schedule. However, this reinforced Nick Fury's belief that Schiller was an unpredictable and dangerous figure, especially given his increasingly close ties with Stark, which was not good news. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s intention to use Stark is written all over their faces. Nick Fury clearly wants to exploit Stark's sense of justice to do things for S.H.I.E.L.D. The S.H.I.E.L.D. agents weren't the only ones encountering strange occurrences. Schiller also noticed odd things happening around his clinic these past few days. It wasn't until 4 pounds of cake went missing from his refrigerator that Schiller realized his clinic must have been burgled. Chapter 14: Sudden Change in Art Style. In Hell's Kitchen, a place rife with theft, Schiller had never heard of a thief who would specifically target cakes. Not just cakes, but also Schiller's ground coffee, soda crackers, and jam. Is this thief a reincarnated starving ghost? Stealing 4 pounds of cake a day wasn't enough. He also had to add half a pound of soda crackers, 2 cans of coffee powder, and 3 jars of jam. Schiller thought. He's not afraid of stuffing himself to death. Of course, although it wasn't anything important that was stolen, Schiller still had to catch the thief and figure out how he had managed to steal it. Schiller set a trap using the thief's favorite cake and a little bit of fear gas. In the warehouse he rarely visited in the house, waiting for the thief to take the bait. While waiting for the bait to take effect, Schiller was writing in a notebook the story he would use to fool the Ancient One. Schiller's instilling the concept of the King in Yellow into the Ancient One was not unfounded. In the Marvel Universe, there are countless cosmic demons, such as the Trinity, the Vishanti, whose power the Ancient One drew upon. The origins of Cthulhu in Marvel are rather fragmented. Some say he is the embodiment of nothingness, while others say he is the blood and tears of the universe. They are not a unified race, and their appearances are generally quite diverse. True Cthulhu literature is more systematic, starting with the demon lord Asathos. But Schiller mentioned a different system to the Ancient One, namely a cursed play that Chambers had created in his short story, The King in Yellow. The setting in this scenario is more fantastical and romantic than the Cthulhu mythos. In the distant Aldebaran star cluster, on Lake Halley in the ancient city of Calcosa, an ancient outer god, the Yellow King, is imprisoned. He witnessed the fall of 2 black suns and was later established as the representative of wind among the great old ones, becoming a mortal enemy of Cthulhu. The most well-known feature is the yellow mark, a unique symbol belonging to the King in Yellow. But none of that really matters. What matters is that Schiller needs a plausible identity to speak with the Ancient One. He can talk to Stark as a psychologist, act as Spider-Man's mentor, or Daredevil can treat him as a criminal, it doesn't matter. But the Ancient One is different. If Schiller didn't have a sufficiently mysterious and powerful identity, then this powerful Sorcerer Supreme wouldn't listen to him. Because Schiller had read the comics, he knew that the Great Old Ones also existed in the Marvel Universe. Now he reminded the Ancient One, and if the Ancient One were to verify it, she would find that everything that Hastur, played by Schiller, said was true. There was once a group of blind and foolish Great Old Ones imprisoned in an extra dimension, but no one knew if they would ever return to Earth. As long as the Ancient One has even a sliver of faith in Schiller's portrayal of the King in Yellow, Schiller can obtain a considerable amount of the information he desires from her. While waiting for the thief trap to take effect, Schiller intermittently filled in the gaps in the Aldebaran star cluster setting. After all, to fool the Sorcerer Supreme, his identity and background had to be at least self-consistent. The thief didn't keep Schiller waiting long. On a dark and stormy night, Hell's Kitchen was unusually quiet, with no gunshots. Schiller was lying in bed, half asleep, when he heard a loud bang coming from the warehouse downstairs. He immediately came to his senses and realized that his trap had worked. He really hadn't expected that he could actually catch the thief with just a cake. He tiptoed downstairs without turning on the lights, knowing that if the other person was armed, they would aim at him immediately upon seeing him. For his own safety, Schiller planned to use Blink to teleport to the other side of the corridor, catching them off guard. Just as he was about to teleport away, he suddenly noticed that the warehouse door was open. Could it be that the thief wasn't controlled by the fear gas? And could he even open the door and walk out on his own? This was not good. Schiller abandoned his plan to teleport because once he teleported there, not only would the thief need a moment to react, but Schiller himself would also have about 2 seconds to adjust to the unfamiliar environment, which was the case every time he teleported. He realized the thief didn't seem to have noticed him. He tiptoed along the wall and down the corridor, only to find an extremely short, round figure, barely reaching a person's calf, emerging from the crack in the door, complaining as he went, "Damn it! Am I drunk? Why does this cake smell like a septic tank?" Schiller looked at the figure, hesitated, then turned around, reached for the light switch, and turned it on with a click. The round creature opposite him let out a startled cry and immediately tried to run away on all fours. Schiller stretched out his right hand and used a telekinetic spell to grab the creature directly into his hand. Schiller's face darkened as he felt the furry texture in his hand. In his hand was a yellow, round, chubby creature with 2 long ears and a lightning bolt-shaped tail, Pikachu. "Shit! Put me down! Don't touch me with your filthy hands! What's wrong with you? How could you grab me like that? Let me go!" Schiller's face was now extremely ugly. He never dreamed that a yellow-haired electric mouse would appear in such a serious, even slightly dark, story. Suddenly, he felt that Pikachu's scream sounded vaguely familiar. Wasn't that Deadpool's voice? Schiller remembered with some horror that there was indeed a Hollywood movie about Pikachu, namely Detective Pikachu, and that the Pikachu in that movie did indeed share the same voice actor as Deadpool. Schiller took a deep breath, turned Pikachu around, grabbed its 2 little paws and said, "So you're the one who stole my cake? Soda crackers, coffee powder, and jam?" Pikachu's eyes darted around, and its incredibly cute face surprisingly showed a disgusted expression, saying in a Deadpool-like voice, "Hey buddy, I really don't know how you can have such terrible taste. The soda crackers you bought are butter-free. They're awful. And that jam, how could you like strawberry jam? That's totally not my cup of tea. Also, next time you cut a cake, could you please not leave the cake knife on top of it? Do you know that's actually dirty?" Schiller was holding Pikachu in one hand and covering his eyes with the other. It was a huge form of mental pollution for him. He was also powerless to refute Pikachu's complaints because his tastes were indeed quite different from those of real Americans. Listen, you thief. First, you've stolen my food time and time again. Second, you don't feel any remorse whatsoever. It seems you're a repeat offender. All right. Pikachu waved its hand and said, obviously you're not a normal person either. No ordinary person can calmly talk to a mouse that can speak after seeing it. Schiller pursed his lips, staring wide-eyed at Pikachu. The main reason was that Pikachu's appearance had brought a huge shock to his worldview. He had just been chatting with Batman about life ideals in the incredibly dark Gotham. And in the blink of an eye, this yellow rat with a Deadpool smell appeared in front of him. How could Schiller not have a brain short-circuit? Next, will he need to explore the surrounding bushes to collect all his Pokémon partners before challenging the various gyms? This art style is completely off. Okay? More importantly, although this yellow electric mouse is only up to the height of a human's calf, it has the mouth of Deadpool, the most dangerous spot on Deadpool's body. The good thing is I didn't learn anything. It's about discarding the essence and keeping the dross. This reminded Schiller of reading comics in his past life, where Deadpool's dialogue boxes would often take up most of the page. Now, Deadpool-themed Pikachu, Deadpool, and Spider-Man were all together. Schiller felt that if he lived in a comic book, his face would probably be completely obscured. Moreover, he remembered that in the Hollywood version of Detective Pikachu, Pikachu's character design was actually based on the Japanese game of the same name. In this version, Pikachu wasn't just a cute creature that could only say Pika Pika, but a detective with a deep, masculine voice. Judging from Pikachu's reaction just now, he was indeed quite intelligent and definitely not just a simple pet. After a while, Schiller and Pikachu sat facing each other on the sofa. Pikachu held a cup of coffee in its little paws and said, actually, I don't have any memory of it either. I only remember that after a flash of light, I fell into a garbage truck and struggled to climb out. I was starving and walked around for ages, but all the doors and windows on the street were closed. I couldn't get into any of them except yours. It seems like the back door of your warehouse wasn't closed properly. After I came in, I followed the corridor and found the refrigerator. Of course, it was wrong of me to steal, but I was really too hungry. If possible, I'll pay you for the cake when I make some money. Schiller applauded him and said, I must say, as a mouse, your level of awareness is truly terrifying. If all the mice in the world were as polite as you, then humans wouldn't need to invent so many rodenticides. So you put rat poison next to the cake today? That stinks. Seriously, the smell almost killed me. Actually, that's not rodenticide. It's actually more dangerous than rodenticide. Oh well, you're just a rat anyway. Schiller put down his coffee cup, stared curiously at Pikachu, and said, so, do you know how to do that? What? What can I do? Pikachu looked at him in confusion. Schiller looked at the incredibly human-like expression on that cute yellow face and felt a mix of emotions. He said, it's that one. What exactly are you talking about? Okay, Pikachu, listen, you said you want to earn money to make up for the food you stole, but I don't think anyone else would accept a talking yellow mouse as a worker. So if you want to make up for my losses, you'll have to stay and work for me. And if you want to get a job, you have to show your boss what you're capable of. Right? Oh, I see. You mean discharging electricity? That's my specialty. With me, you can save at least half your electricity bill each month. But I was too hungry before and haven't recovered yet. So I probably can't discharge 100,000 volts, but it should be fine for charging your phone. As it spoke, it landed on its 4 short legs and darted onto the table. It jumped onto the table, took Schiller's phone which was charging, and then ran back to the sofa with the phone to show it to Schiller. Pikachu stretched out its lightning bolt-shaped tail, its whole body flashing with electricity, and Schiller's phone screen lit up, showing that it was charging, though not very quickly. As if to demonstrate its power, Pikachu hugged the phone tightly, swung its tail vigorously, and then stretched out its arms, its body crackling with electricity. The phone started charging incredibly fast, gaining 10% charge in almost a second. Just a second before Schiller stopped it, the phone made a loud bang. Pikachu's yellow fur was blown black, and it exhaled a puff of black smoke. Then, it looked down helplessly at the phone that had exploded in its arms and said, looks like you have no choice but to let me work here. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll never be able to afford to pay for it in my lifetime. Schiller covered his forehead and said, your performance was truly wonderful. It surprised me greatly. I never imagined that there was such a useful charging socket in the world. Pikachu sensed his sarcastic tone and was about to speak when Schiller said, "Okay, but that's not what I want to see." "Then what do you want to see? What other talents do I have? I don't even know myself." "Of course you know, it's that one." Schiller stared intently at Pikachu, who suddenly gave a complicated look, as if it had eaten shit. Reluctantly, under Schiller's gaze, it turned away, then jumped onto the back of the sofa with a loud thud. "Pika! Pika!" Schiller was satisfied. Chapter 15: An invitation to walk into a trap. "You mean, after staking out the area for several days, the biggest problem you discovered was he might be stealing electricity?" Nick Fury stood in the SHIELD office, holding a newspaper, and asked Coulson a question. Coulson knew that this report sounded like something hastily written in the morning after a hangover. The conclusions on it were practically utter nonsense, just a bottle of whiskey away from being complete rubbish. Nick Fury held the report, took a deep breath, his mouth was open, but he paused for a moment, clearly speechless. He said, "Actually, I've never really agreed with the rating criteria for SHIELD agents. Coulson, I think you're my strongest argument against those criteria, aren't you?" Coulson rubbed his hands awkwardly and said, "Actually, it's not like we didn't observe anything. We discovered that there might be a tunnel under his clinic. I should really have Nurse Jenny test you for drunk driving, Coulson. You wrote on this that the target frequently appeared suddenly in other places about 100 meters away from the clinic. And your conclusion is, there might be a tunnel under the clinic." Nick Fury said, "Actually, I know he might have the ability to teleport," Coulson said, crossing his arms and frowning. "But based on the cases we've handled, teleportation always involves a landing moment. We've set up hundreds of miniature cameras around here, but none of them have captured anything unusual." Nick Fury said, "Then let's add a few hundred more. He's very important to us right now, and he's one of the toughest opponents we can handle. Don't let your guard down." Meanwhile, in his Gotham University professor's apartment, Schiller had just woken up when he found himself holding a fluffy thing in his arms. He looked down and saw Pikachu. "Oh, what's wrong? What time is it?" Pikachu was so sleepy he could barely keep his eyes open. Schiller rubbed his eyes. How did this mouse follow him here? Pikachu, still half asleep, looked around and was startled. He instantly snapped awake and exclaimed, "Where am I? How did you bring me here? Are you actually a human trafficker?" Schiller said while folding the blankets, "Why don't you explain to me why you're in my bed first?" "How dare you ask me that?" Pikachu roared. "A 3-story building, and you only turned on the heat in your room. If I didn't know how to pick locks, I'd be frozen to death by now." "Oh, really?" Schiller said without a hint of guilt. "Freeze-dried mice are not a good idea. So why are you here? Where is this?" "As you can see, I can travel through time, so I woke up here," Schiller said. "This is a very dangerous place. If you wander off, you'll be stewed in less than 3 minutes. TCH. Pikachu snorted dismissively. "You can travel through time? Well, I can splash." Schiller wasn't lying, and it didn't matter that Pikachu knew. After all, it's a mouse, and in the eyes of these superheroes, its words are less credible than a broken record. If it went to Batman and started talking, Batman would definitely stew it immediately. Batman doesn't kill people, but he's not immune to killing mice. Few Earth's heroes trust non-human beings. Although Pikachu speaks much like a human and has a strange Canadian accent, this yellow mouse, which clearly looks like some kind of genetically modified creature, is obviously hard to trust any normal person, so Schiller has no worries. While Schiller was making the bed, Pikachu jumped around, sniffing the room, and muttered with a wrinkled nose, "Looks like you're really something. This isn't the same world anymore." Schiller went to class in the morning with Pikachu in his bag. It wasn't that he wanted to bring Pikachu to class. It was mainly because if he didn't bring it, Pikachu would definitely sneak out and get cooked. Pikachu peeked into Schiller's bag several times, only to be pushed back in. In the afternoon, Schiller slammed the bag on the table in the counseling room, patted Pikachu's forehead, and said, "Listen, even if I don't care if people see a strange yellow creature in my bag, I think you understand what I'm telling you. Superheroes, everyone in them lives by the motto meddling in other people's business. No one will let go of the opportunity to study you, this yellow mouse especially." As Schiller was speaking, the door to the counseling room suddenly opened, and Bruce said, "Professor, I..." As soon as he entered the room, he saw his professor pressing his hand against the forehead of a strange yellow creature. Pikachu was startled and instantly darted into Schiller's arms. Schiller pursed his lips, glanced at Pikachu, then at Bruce, and said while holding Pikachu, "If I told you this is a new breed of albino mole, would you believe me?" "You don't believe me? You're planning to make up another one? Are you?" Bruce said, arms crossed. Pikachu bared its teeth at him, but Schiller quickly covered its mouth, saying, "What do you want, Mr. Wayne?" Bruce walked over and said, "Actually, I'm sorry. It's like this. I'd like to invite you to Wayne Manor as a guest." "Visit Wayne Manor? What kind of invitation is this to turn oneself in?" Bruce was clearly in a bit of a dilemma because Schiller knew his true identity, so he couldn't decide whether he should be Bruce or Batman. Moreover, the current Batman wasn't as aloof as he would become later, and would even actively seek to cooperate with Gordon. So Bruce was in a very conflicted state. Schiller could sense something through telepathy. He tapped the table and said, "I can tell, Bruce, you're conflicted right now. Sit down. Actually, you did a great job before. Bruce isn't Batman. He's just a good-for-nothing playboy who loves going to bars and drinking, and is surrounded by beautiful women. Batman, on the other hand, is the complete opposite." Bruce sat down, pressing his finger to his brow. "I don't understand the point of doing this," he said. "I don't think I can fool anyone." Bruce wasn't stupid. He was the only one in Gotham City with that much money, and he was the only one with the financial resources to manufacture Batman's equipment. He didn't think the criminals were fools who wouldn't know he was Bruce Wayne. Moreover, you can deduce a lot just from his physique. Bruce is a womanizer, so he wouldn't be completely covered up at times. It's not hard to figure out some details about his physique. Schiller, in particular, had seen Bruce go out and fool around more than once at night, and the female companions he was with were never the same. Half of the famous Nightingale cheerleading troupe had been involved with Bruce. Schiller actually speculated that many of the highly intelligent villains in the comics shouldn't be completely kept in the dark. This reasoning isn't difficult, but the fact that they still act like, "Who is Batman? I can't figure it out," must have its reasons. Yes, it's not really a secret, but if you want it to be a secret, it can be your weapon when necessary. If you show that you value a certain secret, others will also think that the secret is important to you. You may try your best to hide it, but if you reveal it at a crucial moment, it will naturally prove your sincerity, even if it is not actually important. Schiller was referring to Bruce's later actions against the Justice League. In order to gain the Justice League's trust, Batman took off his mask, revealing a secret that everyone already knew. Batman was Bruce Wayne, but everyone's trust in Batman increased because he consistently showed that he valued the secret and was willing to reveal it for his companions. Of course, he could gain people's trust, even though the secret was obvious if you thought about it for a moment. But that didn't matter. What mattered was his attitude. Bruce stroked his chin and readily continued. "For example, if a criminal tries to use this to threaten me, I can calmly set a trap for him. All right, Mr. Wayne." Schiller glanced at his watch and said, "It's time for the counseling session. As for your invitation, I will consider it carefully after I receive the invitation letter." Bruce didn't quite understand why Schiller needed to think about it carefully. In the United States, a verbal invitation meant that it was a private visit, not a formal one. It was probably just a casual meal together. But when Schiller mentioned the invitation, Bruce felt that Schiller might think the invitation was not formal enough and showed a lack of importance. So after leaving the consultation room, he asked his butler, Alfred, to prepare the invitation and the banquet. What he didn't know was that, to Schiller, being invited to Batman's house was like being asked, "Would you be interested in walking into a trap?" He needs to be mentally prepared for a lot. Although Schiller knew that Bruce was far from being the Batman he would become, and that his two identities were not even completely distinct. If he were the Batman from the comics, Bruce would just come over with a bottle of wine and say he would introduce him to some beautiful women at the party, instead of appearing serious and awkward. But Schiller's stereotypes about Batman were so deep that he even suspected it was a scheme Batman had orchestrated to obtain his DNA, something Batman was absolutely capable of doing. In addition, although Bruce didn't say it, it was clear that Pikachu, the yellow mouse, had caught his attention. Schiller grabbed Pikachu by the tail and lifted it up, saying, "Did you see the guy who just came? That's the boss of Gotham. If you want to live a life of luxury, you'd better not offend him." Pikachu struggled desperately in midair, waving its little arms, saying, "Put me down! That person was really scary." Schiller grabbed Pikachu by the tail and pulled it in front of him, saying, "How did you know?" "Detective's intuition," Pikachu exclaimed. "You should really consider leaving this place. It's making me cold. Wouldn't it be better to go back to where we were yesterday? I can even tolerate you eating strawberry jam." Schiller looked Pikachu up and down and felt that it wasn't telling the truth.